Deleted Peppa Pig episode, The Empty House, which was never showed on TV. The episode begins with Peppa waking up in complete silence. No birdsong, no footsteps from Mummy Pig, no laughter from Daddy Pig. The house is eerily empty. Peppa calls out, "Mummy, Daddy, George." No answer. She walks down the hallway. The floor creaks far too loudly beneath her, and the walls seem to tremble. The family photos on the walls have blurred smudges instead of faces. In the kitchen, the faucets drip a thick black liquid. All the food on the table rots in real time, right before her eyes. Suddenly, George appears from around the corner, but his body is bent at an unnatural angle. He moves toward Peppa in jerky motions, making a horrible grinding sound, like bones snapping. His mouth is open far too wide. From within, a child's voice speaks, but it's not his. "You have to stay with us, forever." Peppa runs down the hallway in terror. She glances back. From every room, copies of George are watching her, each one darker than the last. Their eyes fading, mouths stretching into black, gaping voids. She locks herself in her room, but the walls begin to melt, turning into a dripping mass covered in eyes and mouths, all whispering, "Open the door, Peppa, we're close." Peppa covers her ears, but the whispers only grow louder. The room gradually darkens. Her bed twists and stretches into a portal, crawling with darkness. Footprints begin to appear on the floor, hoofprints like hers, but long, dried, and decayed. Final shot. Peppa sits in the corner of her room, her eyes dull and lifeless. One final message appears. "You're next." Deleted Peppa Pig episode, The Staircase Leading Down, which was never showed on TV. One evening, Peppa noticed a door in the house she had never seen before. Small, wooden, with a cracked handle. It stood in the far corner of the kitchen. Daddy Pig said, "Don't open it, Peppa. There's just an old staircase down there, and below, there's nothing." But at night, Peppa heard a rustling, as if someone was coming up those stairs, step by step. Creak, creak, creak. The next morning, Peppa couldn't resist. She approached the door. It was open. Cold and darkness poured out of it. Before her was an old staircase leading downward with narrow, shaky steps. It looked as if it descended into an endless abyss. Peppa called out, "Is anyone there?" There was no answer, but on the third step a small hoofprint appeared, dusty and exactly like hers. She took the first step, then the second. Each step downward became harder. When she turned around, the light was gone. From the darkness, someone said, "You came down on your own. Now you can't go back up." Final scene. Peppa stands on the last step. In front of her, a huge door without a handle, and behind it, a knocking sound. Knock, knock, knock. On the door, written in bloody letters, "Welcome home." Deleted Peppa Pig episode, Daddy Pig is Not Himself, which was never showed on TV. One morning, Peppa notices something strange. Daddy Pig is sitting at the table, too quietly. He isn't laughing, he isn't telling jokes, he isn't rustling his newspaper. Mummy Pig says, "Let him rest, he's tired." But Peppa notices. Daddy isn't blinking. He doesn't even move. At night, Peppa hears whispering in the hallway. She peeks out of her room and sees Daddy Pig standing in front of the mirror. His reflection is facing the wrong way. The next morning, everything seems normal again. Daddy Pig is smiling, eating breakfast. But when Peppa looks closer, she notices. His smile doesn't change, and it's unsettling. In the evening, the whole family sits in front of the TV. Suddenly, Daddy Pig turns off the lights, and in the darkness, his voice is heard, but not from his mouth. It comes from somewhere above them. "You've been looking at me for too long. Now, I'm looking at you." Final scene. Peppa wakes up at night. Her room is dark. From under the bed, a large figure slowly emerges, with the same smile as Daddy Pig. "Little Peppa," it whispers, "you're next." Deleted Peppa Pig episode, The Room of Forgotten Toys, which was never showed on TV. One cloudy day, Peppa finds a strange door to the attic in their house. She had never noticed it before. Daddy Pig says, "Oh, it's just a storage room for old things." But when Peppa opens the door, she discovers a small room filled with old toys, dolls without eyes, balls with no patterns, wooden toy cars, all of them dusty and forgotten. On the floor sits a box with a sign, "Toys that were never claimed." Peppa feels a strange urge to stay there. The toys seem to be watching her. They don't move, but the longer she looks, the closer they seem. From deep within the room, a quiet child's voice whispers, "Play with us, Peppa. We missed you." When Peppa tries to leave, the door won't open. One of the dolls slowly turns its head. A message appears on the wall. "You are one of us now." Final scene. Peppa wakes up. It was just a dream, she thinks to herself. But then she notices, among her usual toys, there is now an old dusty doll wearing a pink dress and a familiar little ponytail on its head. The doll smiles, its eyes slowly open. "We found you," it whispers in the darkness. Deleted Peppa Pig episode, George's Notebook, which was never showed on TV. The episode starts with no theme song. The camera slowly moves through a dark room. On the table lies an old notebook. The cover is dirty, as if it's been trampled in the mud. The title is scribbled in a child's handwriting, "George, My Dinosaurs." George appears in the frame. He isn't smiling. He sits at the table and opens the notebook. Inside are dinosaur drawings, but they're getting darker and darker. One has wolf-like fangs, another is covered in blood-red stains. Some pages have claw marks, like something scratched the paper from the inside. The sound of the pencil becomes too loud, like it's scratching not paper, but bone. Peppa enters the room. "What are you drawing, George?" He doesn't answer. He just keeps drawing. Peppa comes closer and looks at the notebook. There, it's her face, but the eyes are empty. Below the drawing, a note reads, "She will become a dinosaur too." The same drawings start appearing on the walls, one after another. Peppa screams, "Mummy!" Mummy Pig enters, but her eyes are gone. She speaks in a voice that isn't hers. "He just wants you to play." The final shot, an empty room, only the notebook on the floor. The camera zooms in on it. The last page is blank, but at the bottom there's a message. "Who's next?" The screen goes black, and the sound of the pencil continues for several seconds in the darkness. Deleted Peppa Pig episode, Rainy Day Window, which was never showed on TV. The episode starts with the usual theme tune, but it sounds a bit muffled, like it's being played through an old tape. Peppa appears. "It's raining today. George and I will play inside." The camera slowly zooms in on the window. Outside, the rain falls in a continuous sheet. George stands at the window. He doesn't move. Peppa calls out to him, "George, come play." But he doesn't respond. He just stares out the window. The camera gets closer to his face, and his reflection doesn't match. George turns his head. The reflection stays in place and smiles. Later, Peppa tells Mummy Pig that George is acting strange, but Mummy doesn't react. She just keeps washing dishes. The sound of the water gets louder and louder until it drowns out everything else. Then, at one moment, she turns around. Her eyes are completely black, and in a low voice she says, "The rain won't stop." The scene suddenly shifts. It's night. Peppa wakes up from her bed. Now it's raining inside the room. The walls are wet. The floor is covered in puddles. George is sitting in a corner. He's completely gray, as if the rain washed the color out of him. His voice trembles. He came from the window. The room starts stretching like it's made of rubber. Voices, many George, begin whispering, "Look at yourself." Peppa looks in the mirror. Her face now has George's wide smile. The mouth is too large. The eyes are empty. The final shot, the camera pulls back. Peppa's house stands alone in black void. The rain pours inside. Behind each window, a gray George. And in each window, a different version of events. Then the screen goes black.